IVM.
Hi everybody, just wanted to ask everyone for a quick favor. We're running a brand survey right now and would really appreciate it if you could let us know what you think about the advertising on IVM. Go to ivmpodcast.com/survey and do let us know. As part of this, we'll be selecting 10 random participants and sending them some IVM swag, so do fill out those surveys.
Hello and welcome to the Habit Coach Podcast. I am Ashdin, Doctor, your habit coach, and today is the second episode with Deepak Gopalakrishnan, also known as Chuck. And we had a fantastic episode in the first time around where we were discussing about his guests and the kind of thought processes that they have and the way that they think. And I think that was a very interesting discussion. Make sure you listen to that episode before you listen to this one so that there is some continuation and you understand where we are at, because this is part 2 of that first episode, which is part 1. So we got understanding and picking up lots of dots, which is the first one. The second one is just start. Right? And you notice this across the board with the people that you've interviewed.
Pretty much.
Right?
Yeah.
What else is a meta thought process or habit that everyone has?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm trying to... Okay. So here's one, which I think might be the most useful for many people. And in some sense, it is the most basic as well. I think everyone's success or definition of success varies, right? I think also the problem with a lot of pop advice that comes up is very contextual to one person in one particular industry or one particular set of circumstances, etc. And it's not necessarily easy to transpose that to somebody else, right? For example, if you go on to Medium, you'll find lots of articles like how I made $100,000 in by writing in 4 weeks and all that. And it's good, it's well-meaning advice, but there are lots of factors that led to that person being in a position to have passive income, etc., which may, somebody who's hustling out of college might not have the luxury to do. So I think one thing that all my interviewees were clear on, or rather it became clear to them eventually, was that everybody's definition of success varies, right? For me, what is success for me, or what brings me happiness, might be very different from somebody else, and that's okay. It is okay to have goals for happiness that is different from somebody else's. For example, and this is a life-changing moment in my life, Ashdin, when I was, your typical 28, 30-year-old hustling and trying to get to a point where, going up the ladder as much as possible, constantly paranoid about whether my other batchmates are making more or less than me, all those typical things that happen to a paranoid B-schooler. And I remember reading in one article somewhere about some young prodigy who got promoted to a very senior role in Flipkart or something. And my visceral gut reaction was, what a poor sod. He's going to have so his happiness jacked out of it. So just that reaction, which was more pity than congratulations, just made me realize that, okay, it's very clear then what my career path is. It's not really about making a lot of money. And I think that was an important moment for me when I realized, hey, I don't need to chase money because, okay, if I'm making 1.5 while somebody else is earning 2, fair enough, yeah, because I've got other things going for me, which they don't. I think that was important. It built up over a period of time. And when I started freelancing, it was very, very important for me. And today I work, like, for example, for me, the most important thing I realized was to have complete control over my time. I need to choose what I work on, who I work with. And, touch wood has worked out fairly well. And I think that brings me happiness more than anything else. I know I could possibly double my income by slogging more, but that's not what I mean, to avoid that is what I got into this sort of, so that I can have a background with weird things like you commented and do interviews with you and things like that. Because that's what genuinely brings me joy rather than having an extra zero in my bank balance, although that wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing by itself. But I think that's the thing. I think everybody needs to sort of figure out what their own sort of goals are, what their own definition of happiness is. And it's completely okay not to have an answer for it. Like many of these things are WIP. Like your goals might be something as frivolous sounding as in 5 years, I need to go on an expensive vacation to the Bahamas, whatever. Like that's okay. It's still some sort of a goal, right? Then you can start working towards it. Ask yourself what matters most for you, because then that will determine everything else you do and give purpose to everything that you do. And in the course of my interviews, you obviously had some people who wanted to become famous. You had some people who wanted to become the fittest version of themselves. Some people who were motivated by wanting to create content. Some people who were just curious, and in the course of all their content creation, they felt happiness by just creating content and satisfying their own curiosity. Utsav's Postcards from Nowhere is a perfect example of that. So I think anyone who's listening to this, no matter which stage you are in, especially if you are, just starting out your career, and if you are, I mean, let's face it, graduation, most of us get into without too much of a thought. And then it's only after that we really start building our careers. And then anyone who's stuck in the typical 28 to 32, 33-year-old early midlife crisis sort of thing, ask us for it. What do I like? What really gives me happiness? Like Amit put it beautifully, actually. He says, he asked, for you, forget everything that's happening right now. What does your ideal day look like? Not your ideal life, but what does your ideal day look like? Your day to day, your average day, right? What is the happiest version? What is the best version of your life you think you would like to do? It's not about the vacation. It's not about the fancy cars, because those are all flash in the pants. But what does your everyday look like? Then start working yours backwards. What's stopping me from getting there right now? A lot of your problems get solved when you start thinking about things that way. So yeah, I think to sum that little bit up, I know rambled a little bit, which is try to figure out what your own goals are and what your own definition of happiness is. It's not something that will come very quickly, but it's something that you might just need to disconnect from life once in a while. This is slightly related to something else I wanted to say, so I'm going to call this a sub habit itself, which is,
if you're going to go into a different direction, I want to just talk a little bit about what you're talking about before we jump into that part.
Done.
And I think there are 2-3 things that really stuck out to me. The first one is understanding that there is a difference between goal and purpose. Now the word purpose has been thrown around so much that, again, like we were saying, in DMs and Instagram, Ashdin, I'm 23 and I don't know my purpose. Dhakkan, you're not supposed to know your purpose at 23, right? The idea of purpose is something that has become such a buzzword. But understand that you don't necessarily need to have a purpose at that point. But do you at least 100%. Have a goal?
Yeah.
That goal is important. Forget about the purpose. The goal is important, because the way that I like to think about success, and a definition that I found very, very useful, was a continuous movement towards a worthy goal is success. Right? So if you're seeing progress, you're being successful.
Yeah.
It's not the fact that you've reached the goal.
Yeah.
If you're at least moving towards that goal, you start feeling successful.
Yes, absolutely.
And we want to feel successful every day. We don't want to feel successful only once we reach that goal.
Yeah.
Correct? So that's why having a goal is so important, because it gives you that sense of momentum in your life. So you don't feel that you're stagnant.
Yeah.
Purpose aa jayega. In any case, we will go through probably 3 career changes in our life where we, one that we start off with because mommy daddy told us that this is what we need to study. Then one that we suddenly realize saying, acha, isme zyada fun hai. And then one we probably do from a society's point of view.
Yeah.
As in for people.
For
people, not society, matlab log kya kahenge, but like more for people kind of career. And that's the way in which we're going to go. Maybe somewhere along the line, you'll find your purpose.
Yeah.
So that distinction I loved, which is goal and purpose, so important.
Well said. And over here, I'll just add, actually, it fits in beautifully over here now. And I'll tell you the genesis of this. So when I was speaking to Rohan, he was telling me about, and when I say Rohan, I mean Mojo Rojo, the comedian who was a part of AIB. He was talking about that frantic period where they went from underground heroes to mainstream success in the span of like 5-6 months, right? We suddenly were getting millions of views and things that, you're never used to. Just sudden overnight success. And then it was frantic after that, right? For the next 5-6 years, it was just a constant series of putting out content, directing stuff, this thing, that thing, all that. And obviously all of that had its, while the numbers and the public and all that was great. I mean, the public facing stuff was all great, took a great toll on him. And when everything that happened, and of course, I mean, towards the end of AIB, it allowed him for the first time in so many years to step away from the madness, step away from the party and put his own career in perspective. And that helped guide a lot of what he wanted, what he ended up doing post that. So Many people might complain, hey, Rohan, you're not making as much content as you used to do before. But that's a conscious decision that he's made, not out of lethargy, but that's the way he wants to lead his life. And anyone who follows him on Instagram knows that he's living a life that he's enjoying himself. He may not be putting out as much content anymore, but that's a conscious choice that he's made. Good for him, I say. If you are, if you're putting out stuff that only you want to consciously, then that's I think that's great. So the point I wanted to make over here was try to get that sense of perspective whenever, wherever you can, with respect to your career, with respect to your job, with respect to your relationship, anything. It's not an easy thing to do because it takes time. Sometimes you might need to step out for a couple of days, a couple of weeks, whatever it is. And today, unfortunately, and these days when we go on vacations, those end up being as stressful because you're trying to pack in as much as possible and doesn't really give you that time to reflect, etc. Take a weekend, take a couple of hours, just think, put the damn phone away, take a pen and paper and just, make a few notes, think about what you want to be and all that. I think spending that amount of time, spending those couple of hours on your career, on yourself, just dissociating from the everyday, I think has helped me a lot, has helped me immensely a lot. And it's kind of similar to what you were talking about with Tim Ferriss and that relationship exercise that you're doing. It's exactly that, right? Getting away from the everyday and just looking at things neutrally in perspective with the aim of improving things, of course. So I thought that was very, very powerful. I think it's an addendum to what we were just talking about. Yeah.
Correct. Like, for example, in fact, we just finished the series on the Habit Coach podcast, which is all about the trekking that I do.
Yeah.
So I just finished the trek in Leh Ladakh, and I came back. And the reason why I go on these treks is because it gives you 10 days without your phone.
Yeah.
It gives you 10 days with your thoughts, and you can allow your brain to marinate all the dots that it's picked up in these mad months and hectic days, and just allow it to settle. Yeah. And then what happens is insane ideas come out at the end of it. Like from the end of this particular trip, an insane perspective has come out, which scared the crap out of me. But it's something that I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And it's going to completely change the way that I do either business, work, or whatever that I'm doing in this format. It's given me a completely different goal to chase after.
Lovely.
And I'm very, very excited about it. So slowly, it's going to start rolling
absolutely.
out.
By the way, just a personal recommendation for you, Ashdin. Check out the episode I did with Mohan Krishnamurthy. I think it's the 4th of the series. He also had a life-changing moment. And I know him as a very, very avid trekker. And I did my first Himalayan trek along with him a few years back. So I think you will love that, because so much of what you're saying, the perspective, seeing, there is something about seeing that majesty of nature in that scale for the first time, and how moved he was by it and all that. I think you'll really resonate with that.
I'd love that. Which trek did you do?
Which trek did I do? In the Himalayas, that was Rupkund and Bangarchula.
Nice.
Yeah, although I couldn't finish the Rupkund trek because I got an eye infection.
But
I guess those are just stories. But apart from that, I've done a lot of the usual Maharashtrian treks over here and stuff like that. Yeah, Sahyadris, absolute. Sahyadris is where the heart is. For me, it's Sahyadris over Himalayas. I guess maybe because it's just closer to home. So
the Nepal Himalayas are completely different ballgame altogether. Completely different vibe.
Let's. I think we should not talk about travel right now, because if we go down that rabbit hole, it's just going to make us a little sad at the moment. Right now, I'll just be happy if I can go to
tired of hearing about trekking from the previous week. So I think we should continue.
Yeah, right now I'll be happy if I can just get to Santa Cruz.
We're gonna take a quick break. See you on the other side.
Hey, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Speakeasy, get a glimpse into the startup world, uncover interesting revelations about gaming and healthcare with Vishal Gondal, founder and CEO of Goki, and also host of the Vishal Gondal podcast on the IVM Network. On Aapka Paisa Vaisa, Vikram Shah teaches us how to invest internationally. Aiming for a spot at the Oscars, musician Sahil Bhargav introduces us to his world of animated storytelling on storytellers and storysellers. On Postcards from Nowhere, Utsav has started a new series, The Kashmir Diaries. Here we meet the last rosewater maker of Srinagar. And on The Fighting Goat, the hosts estimate the amount of money spent overall in MMA sports. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any other show for that matter, please do tell a friend. That's really helpful for us. And finally, we'd like to thank the sponsors on the network this week, Siet Cred, Bank of Baroda, Intuit India, and CoinSwitch Kuber. We really do appreciate the support.
Welcome back. All right, let's jump into the conversation.
Yeah.
Super.
Let's go on.
Yeah, let's go on. Go for it.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. I forgot. I forgot I'm the one who has to say these things.
You aren't the host today. Yo.
Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah. So let's see. What else do I have? Because I've written down 7 things actually, but some of these have got covered with each other. So I'm just trying to see whether
Turn
there
into
are
Bhelpuri.
Yeah. So I'm just seeing if there's something else I can actually add over here. Or in fact, try and even recall something else from somewhere else. Okay, so let me. So this actually might be the thing that's closest to the habit of habit coach fame, which is build rituals, but build rituals that work for you. Is important. I think it's also a natural derivation of figuring out what your own personal goals are, and building your own life in the way that works for you, etc. Build rituals that work for you in the sense everybody operates completely differently. Some of us, for example, like to exercise in the morning. Some of us don't like to exercise at all. Some of us like to exercise in the evening. I think it's important to figure out where you fall in this continuum and operate well accordingly. Like in that interview that you did with Kunal, you spoke about, I think, what is the beautiful phrase that you use? Keystone habit. Is that the phrase that you use? Yeah, which I thought was lovely because it sets the tone for so much else. In some sense, what that means is when you do your exercise early in the day, not just have you got exercise, but you've also got something more out of it, right? So in that sense, you have derived something more than some of its parts, those kind of things. So I think life for me is a constant, trying to figure out what are keystone habits like this. What is one thing I can do whose outcome is actually 2, if that sort of makes sense. And I'll tell you how I have done this, or at least how I think I am doing it. So like I said, I work in the field of marketing, mostly marketing and content a little bit. And last year I did a little experiment, and I put out a digital marketing course. I thought there would be 10 people who would sign up for it. Turns out that a lot more people than 10 were interested in it, and I'm currently running the 4th batch.
Wow.
I mean, it's just one of the things that just, but then when you go from an expected 10 to suddenly you're having a batch of 150, so everything changes, right? Now you're not doing it for a bunch of friends, which is genuinely who I thought would sign up for this, but now to complete strangers, and your accountability level is now completely different. So
and you need a new Zoom account as well.
Yeah. I mean, your premium Zoom account. Yeah, that's when you made it. You have a premium Zoom account of your own. Absolutely. And, as a result of that, I realized that, okay, now this clearly has a lot of potential for being a keystone habit. Of course, I didn't call it by that phrase then. I heard that only on your show much, much later. But I realized, okay, if I'm putting so much effort into researching for this, putting slides together, etc., for this, very easily I can extend this to a few other things. One of the small experiments I started in parallel with that is I had this idea that I wanted to offer value, if I may use that marketing term. I want to offer extra value to my students by saying, hey, listen, you sign up for this course, but for life, I'm going to send you one marketing case study every week, right? It's my way of keeping in touch with students. It's my way of also forcing myself to be updated with what's happening in the industry. See, this is work I had to do in any case. Now, if I force myself, and I'm pretty sure a lot of your guests have said this at some point, which is a great way to do something is just by committing publicly to it, right? Right. So this forced me to do that. So, with one bird, I was killing off multiple stones. No, wait, my analogy went completely wrong over there. But
full ulta happened.
Full ulta happened. But you get what I'm saying. So that small experiment, that little newsletter that I wanted to do exclusively for my students, one of the non-students said, I don't want to sign up for your course because I know digital pretty well, but I'm willing to pay for just that newsletter. Will you do that for me? I said, oh, okay. I never thought of it that way. And now that became a newsletter of its own, which became its own revenue stream. It doesn't make me that much money, but it's still an interesting project to put out. And the fact that I charge a small amount of money, $300 a year, I don't think is too much. Forces me to be accountable. And what ends up happening, this has now become a nice, happy ecosystem. It's interesting that we are recording this today, Ashdin, because just today, I started an offshoot of the courses, which is custom workshops for a couple of companies. That one small experiment I started and just trying a few things on the side is led to a newsletter, is led to workshops, it's led to many of my students actually ending up becoming clients of my own. It's great that the digital marketing course has become its own lead gen platform for me later. And all of this is okay, I put my research for all of this is the same, right? The research that I'm doing for all of this. So in some way, this whole thing has become a huge keystone habit by itself, because now I have to block off X amount of time every week in order to research for not just one, but now all of these things. So that's the way I'm trying to do things right now, where I read a lot. I end up, again, that's not a boast. I'm just a compulsive news and article and newsletter reader and stuff like that. So for me, the thing is, see, this I want to do out of pleasure anyway. How can I monetize this? That is what I want to know. I will happily sit and read Wired and Fast Company for pleasure. Now, if I can distill some of that down into original content that somebody is going to pay me for, then I have monetized my hobby. That is the way I'm thinking about this whole thing. So for me, life is completely, become around now, how do I turn these little things that I do, derive some original content or thoughts, insights, etc. out of it, put it into the course or something else. So you can, there used to be this joke a long time back, right? When social media marketing was just starting to become a thing, kids can now finally say that time spent on Facebook is actually research, So this is just a natural extension of that, I think. So this is
and all your articles that you come out with and you write, slowly give them to a ghostwriter, make a book on it. You got one more revenue.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah,
you can just start expanding on it as much as
absolutely.
possible.
So I've realized that this has some legs to it, and again, I think I might sound like I had a plan all along, but it never was. I think one very important, I think that might be a nice way to end up this whole thing is, I don't think any of my guests also, and just taking the focus away from here, I realized I was talking about me for a while over there. I think while I admired all of them, and while all of them definitely had success in their own definition, I don't think any of them really started off saying, "Oh, I am going to, have this definite success by this point of time." I don't think anyone had any sort of plan. And if you listen to all of Amit's interviews with his own guests, where he devotes an entire 1 hour just talking about their journey itself, which is the first 1/3 of his interviews. What is so stark to me is that very few people had their plan very clearly in their head from the beginning. I think the most successful people that I spoke to, and indeed he also spoke to, which is people who were very aware of what they were doing at every point of time, learning at each step of the way, and having enough humility to change course, go somewhere else, take those lessons with them. I don't think anyone had a path. I don't think anyone had a certain chart. Like, there are so many other shows also about this. If you've heard if you've heard Guy Raz's podcast for NPR, How I Built This, for instance, where he speaks to entrepreneurs. Again, many of them started off here and ended up somewhere completely different because of an accident or because of an inspiration that came from somewhere else. Very rarely was it, I started one store was success, I got money, expanded one store to 5 stores, became 10 stores, national store, international store. Very, very rarely does something like that actually happen, I've realized. And that's, honestly speaking, a very boring way to get to success, I think. So yeah, I think defining your own success and also just being aware enough about where you are in the journey, if that sort of makes sense. All my guests I spoke to, for instance, I don't think, like, when I asked them to paint a picture back as to where they were when they started their career, everyone had a decent sense of their abilities. But then life throws various things your way. You end up somewhere which you never expected you would be in. So yeah, just be prepared for that little journey, I guess, as long as you're open-minded enough and have enough humility about yourself to change back and not put too many eggs in one basket. I think, I think there's a lot that can be done. Yeah.
Critical. So the first thing that I wanted to highlight from what you said was they knew where they were.
Yeah.
Right? Very often, either we don't know where we are, right? Because we are floundering.
Yeah.
We're just like basically chilling. We don't really know where we are. Or the second is we're so obsessed with the future that we don't realize where our starting point is.
Yeah.
Like on a Google map, you need to enter your starting point and your destination. You can't just say destination.
Beautiful. That's so well put.
Correct. So you have to put that in. And then the second part was allowing yourself to pivot, right? Like, and we'll continue with the Google Maps analogy because we started off on that. It's like, if you ever try leaving Pune in a car using Google Maps, you will always find a road that is under construction.
Correct.
Right? Now you'll have to start going in another direction to try and figure out how to get out of Pune. The problem is that Google Maps still wants you to pass and go through that stupid
Food mall.
no entry that you've entered into, right?
Yeah.
So you still have to then learn how to pivot and be okay with
Yeah.
changing direction, like you said, changing tack.
Yeah.
And well, in Hindi we can say palat, palat, palat,
Yeah.
palat, 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 right? And be okay with that. And it is not a ego issue. Very often turns into an ego issue. How can I give up on this? Nay, Baba, you're not giving up. You're probably finding an easier route.
Yeah.
Now, Dakkan, find an easier route.
Yeah. So if I may sum up that in with an unnecessary joke, you should know when your pilot is and when your palat is. Feel
Where
free
is your
to use
pilot?
that.
Where is your
Feel
palat?
feel free to use that pilot episode and palat episode when you realize that you need to change your content completely.
I love it.
I like that. I like how that sounds.
पलट एपिसोड जी हम इस तरह के जा रहे थे फिर पलट एपिसोड हो गया आई थिंक नाइस also I've noted down another episode that's going to come out from this, which is an idea, which was what is your habit ROI, which is where this discussion started.
Yes. Thank you for mentioning that. Actually, when you said ROI, did you have a question on that? Sorry, before because I just remembered something else I wanted to say.
No, I was just going to tell our producer to remind me to make an episode on habit ROI. So when he listens to that, he'll tell me about it. So habit ROI is very, very important. Like how you said, right? What is the bang for my buck I'm going to get from this habit? Should I be investing in this habit or the other one? Because all habits require time and effort.
Yeah. So to all my guests, or not to all of them, to some of them, I asked them, do you lead your life by any sort of metrics or something like that? Some of them didn't, to be honest, but some of them came up with some very interesting sort of metrics. Like Ashok, for instance, Krish Ashok, he said he keeps a track of his content consumption versus creation ratio, which I thought was a nice way of putting it. Now, the important thing to note is there is no ideal number for this. So for him, it's a constant experimentation in terms of which one gives him more happiness or less stress. And I thought that was quite nice. So I think having these sort of internal heuristics for yourself, I think would be a pretty nice way of going about it. So everyone has these sort of internal metrics. I think it's worth creating your own.
Very, very interesting one this is, especially for content creators. Create more than you consume is a very, very nice way of approaching it. Also reduces your stress.
Yeah. Or it can be the other way around, right? Maybe the kind of work, like Amit, for instance, I'm sure while he does a 3-hour output, I'm very sure he does a lot more consumption for that. And again, the idea is not to get to say an ratio of 1 or 10 or 15 or whatever it is, right? It's really about what works for you. You might be the kind of person I know many people who are happy just being on Twitter to consume content and they have never tweeted anything in their life. Fair enough. If it works for you, then great. I mean, I am not one thing I've realized, Ashdin, over a period of time is anything that is prescriptive in nature, unless it comes from a doctor, you should not follow it. Which is like, you should lead your life this way. Here are 10 things to follow so that you can become a millionaire by the age of 35. But I don't want to go through that stress. I'm okay not being a millionaire by the age of 35. So anything that is like, you have to read 10 books a day. There are some fundamentals, of course, like exercise and all that. I mean, let's be smart about it. But anything from a productivity point of view, I think everything is so subject to so many things. And I also find like many, when it's prescriptive, it doesn't take a person's background into account, right? Like, does the person have the financial ability to start worrying about these things from now? So goals for somebody who comes from a disadvantaged background would be very, very different from a person, arguably like you and me, who have a certain bit of privilege and all that right now. So this is a completely different. So which is why first principles, like when in doubt, go to first principles. I think first principles is a phrase that you'll hear at least 5 times across the entire show series.
Interesting.
Yeah.
There's this whole concept. And very often I get asked, Ashdin, what is the best grain to have? Ashdin, what is the best fat oil to have? Ashdin, what is the best? Every time the word best is used, it means prescriptive, right? Only do this, don't do anything else. Why would you not have the best?
Yeah.
So my standard answer, which frustrates everybody, is it depends.
It depends. Oh, yeah. Same thing. So I used to get into this thing of, again, this is a complete deviation. Which are the best Beatles songs? Like, but if I say best Beatles songs, and like it will not be some. So I have now turned it into my favorite Beatles songs, because then it's what works for me, right? I think that context is important. It depends. Unfortunately, it's a very frustrating phrase, but I have said it way more times than I care to
Yeah,
admit for
especially when,
questions like this.
on my platform, when we discuss nutrition,
Yeah,
nutrition though is like full, everybody has their own opinion on it. It
yeah.
is like, how dare you say something like this about it,
My
right?
goodness, people can get militant, about.
Huh, huh. So right now the current the fight on my channel is about white rice and
White
what is
rice.
the good, bad, avoid, not avoid. So on full drama is happening on white rice. On it depends, and that's
Yeah,
what we need to learn and
absolutely.
understand.
Yeah,
Beautiful,
yeah.
super.
What else?
Let's go and think about one last meta way of thinking that your guests have. That if we start probably learning from or start thinking like that, we can start seeing a dramatic shift in the way that we approach life.
That's it's. I'm actually trying to think. I'm just trying to think of everything together to see if there's anything missed out. I think, to me, honestly, the figuring out what your own goals are individually, I think that is the thing that makes the most amount of sense. Okay, I'll phrase something like this. It's something that 2-3 guests said in different ways, which is compartmentalizing your energy or dopamine. Does that sort of make sense? Everybody, like, okay, I think it was Rohan who said in the interview that I did that everybody has a very, very finite well of energy. Identify how much you have and then consciously appropriate it apportion it rather, across the various activities that you have to do. You might realize that some activities increase that well of energy. Maybe exercising early in the morning actually gives you that extra dose that you need, sort of like a video game where you just got a power up and suddenly 100 life has become 150 life or something of that sort. And the same thing for interest as well. Like for dopamine, for instance, it is impossible to be constantly kicked and worried about and enthusiastic about everything, and to do that on a day-on-day basis. So again, I think some of this goes back to that self-awareness that we were talking about. But I think compartmentalizing both energy and dopamine, I think, would be a great way to generally lead life. And as long as you're heading towards the right direction, like you said, I think what that thing that you said, right? As long as you're moving to, it is not the going to the end goal that is that's the objective. It is that thing along the way. Neil Gaiman has this fantastic short story. I forgot what it was called, but I think it was called The Mountain, and it was some short story that he wrote, especially keeping content creators, writers, cartoonists, etc. in mind, which is go towards the mountain. And since we spoke about trekking as well, this is I think a nice way to just wrap everything up, which is there'll probably be several ways to get towards a mountain. There'll be this route, that route, whatever. There will be some deviations along the way and all that, but as long as you are moving towards that general direction, you will be fine, right? There will be some scenic routes that you might want to take, right? Which might take away some of your time, but hey, you will eventually come back on the right path if you learned something extra from the scene, something nice, great. If there's a path that's going to take you completely different, right, to a completely different mountain, then resist that temptation and come back. So identify what that mountain is in your life and go straight ahead. I forget what it's called. I think if you search for Neil Gaiman mountain content creator, I think you will find this short story. I think it's available for free somewhere. I saw an animated version in a small book of illustrated short stories that my wife has, and she's a big Gaiman fan.
Nice.
So yeah, I think that would be one way I would end this up. But I wish you had asked me this question. If you had told me that you would be asking questions right at the beginning, because then I would have ended with everyone just asking questions of themselves to figure out their own sort of strategy, life path, and all that. I think Ashdin,
maybe that itself is a brilliant way,
yeah.
which is introspection, right?
Yeah.
Did you notice that all your guests introspected?
Oh, 100%, a lot. Because I think also, so one, all of them very, very self-aware. Two, I think I asked them questions that not too many people have asked them before, right? Because most of people would ask, say, a Dimant Parekh about the success of his business and all that. Not too many people might have asked him, okay, how did you feel when you went from here to here? Like, what were your thought processes that led to this sort of a decision? What are the things that you learned from childhood that ended up, in this decision today? So yes, there was a lot of introspection. And again, it goes back, right? Introspection, self-awareness, setting your own goals, all that. Knowing yourself inside out, I think, is extremely, extremely important. Be it with yourself, highly recommend a therapist or any sort of help like that if anyone needs needs it. But delusion, I think, would be a very, very dangerous thing to be in. So yeah, as much self-awareness as possible, because I think it's important to know what your own, what, see, at the end of the day, what matters? At the end of the day, happiness is what matters. Happiness or satisfaction, however you want to phrase it. Different people have different ways of phrasing it, right? If I get my kicks out of going and say cycling every day for 100 kilometers, fair enough, then I should optimize my life so that I can make that happen. If somebody else's dream, the goal is just hustling and making a lot of money because they're constantly driven by that push. As long as they're sure about that, then fair enough, go for it. If that's what makes you happy and is not hurting anybody else. So yeah, I think that sort of self-awareness, which leads to your own goals, and then your own habits and all that. Yeah, everything else we spoke about just gets encapsulated, I guess, within that. Yeah.
I think understanding yourself is so critical. The way that you put it in, because I remember, and you're talking about money, right now, and I was like, I was once having this conversation with my dad. We were sitting in Goa. We had just gone on a holiday, and I was saying, if we had sold all our businesses and we suddenly got, say, $100 million, what would we do with that money?
And
I'm like, is this something that you want? And he said, no. I said, that's not something that I want. Immediately, mental shift. Maybe that's not the direction in our life that we're going to go, and maybe that is not the way that we'll measure our success. $100 million earning. Correct. What would you do with it? Fine. How much do we need? We need this much. Let us figure about this, and then what else can we do to make our lives feel worthwhile?
I think it's also difficult, especially in this country, because we have been used to, or at least growing up, we've been habituated to success being a particular kind of thing, getting high marks or studying, or being a good boy, engineering, and then this thing, that, the MBA after that, and then earning lots of money, car, big city, whatever. But it doesn't always necessarily need to be that way. And sometimes I feel that if I look back at my life, the people who have actually followed their path are some of the most confused and sad people that I know. And people who have strayed off the path completely, people who I thought would be absolute losers, have actually ended up being the happiest and most sorted people I know. Do they have the biggest houses? No, not really. Do they have the most money, zeros in their bank balance? Well, not on the right side of the number in any case. But at the end of the day, what matters is how happy you are when you conquer, and what sort of impact you've left on other people, I suppose. And I have no doubt that, that's what I really want to learn. That's what I'm trying to do with the show as well, which is trying to figure out, okay, what are the decisions that made you go from here to here, right? I think a good way to end this also might be to talk about the last interview that I did, which is with a friend of mine who's done a lot of work in social service. And the joy that gives him and the meaning that it has given him in his life is immeasurable. You can just see it in the way he talks. You just want to hear him talk again. Yes, tell me more about the projects that you've done, because he just shines through in everything that he does. But, I think it's just about that. It's just about figuring what you want to do in life and going for it, despite what society says that you should be doing. Sometimes it's a bit of a fight, because you always have to push back and say, no, I don't want to do this. Like, I don't want to do engineering. I want to do, say, advertising, or I don't want to do advertising. I now want to become a freelancer full time. But yeah, as long as you have enough conviction, I guess, things will work out.
And if it scares you enough, do it.
Yeah, that's beautifully put. If it scares you, if it actually, a friend put it even better, if it doesn't scare you, it's not worth doing, or you're not going to be excited about it. If it, I think that's great career advice.
Awesome. I love this conversation, and I love the way it ended. Just scare everybody.
Too much gyan happened, but I absolutely loved it.
That's what we're all about, gyan. But the thing is that on the Habit Coach podcast, the second thing that we focus on is, after you got all this gyan, do something about it. So guys, if you're listening to this and you heard all of this, please do something about it, because that's the way you're going to see the growth.
I have an actionable. You asked for an actionable, so I have an actionable. My third episode, I think, was with Utsav Mamoria, who actually has put together very helpfully. He's compiled a set of 6 questions to ask yourself to figure out your career path. So everything that we spoke about right now, Utsav's written a lovely a lovely blog post, which is linked out to that episode. But to make it easier for your listeners, I will send that to you as well, so you can link it out to the notes of this particular episode as well.
Perfect.
I think that would be a great place to just start.
Beautiful. I think at the end of this, as soon as you see it, go down to the link that Deepak has put inside and notice what it is that the questions are. Spend some time, sit with your coffee, sit with your chai, and answer these 6 questions. I think that would be a fantastic way.
If you need something stronger than coffee or coffee, then please go for it. Whatever helps you get clarity.
Bisleri, na?
Sure. Let's go with that.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming. Love it.
Thank you so much for having me on and for this conversation. This is amazing. I didn't think that we would go on talking for this long, but thoroughly enjoyed it, Ashdin. Thanks so much.
Deepak, thank you so much. How can people get in touch with you? Do you want to direct people into certain things that you're doing?
Yeah, sure. So as you can see, I ended up doing quite a few things, but I'm reasonably active on social media, though I don't check as often as I used to back in the day. Chuck_Gopal on Twitter and at Chuck of All Trades on Instagram are where I'm most active on. I do a lot of projects ranging from these podcasts and my digital marketing course and a few other things. I've actually made a website just to consolidate everything together. So chuckofalltrades.in is the website that I've just created a few weeks back. So everything that I do is in there, and hopefully you'll find something that interests you. There's a music group that I run on Telegram with a friend where we try to share one nice piece of rock or metal every day. And that might be a decent place to start as well. So all these will be on that website. So I hope that helps.
Bapre, you're doing so much stuff. So interesting.
No, all of these, Ashdin, they are all just ways to keep me. If you notice, all of these things are just ways for me to keep up with things that I'm interested in. That music group, for instance, forces me to go and listen to Spotify's new releases so that I know what's up. So
interesting. Passion projects that grow.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Deepak.
Thank you so much for this conversation. And thank you guys if you've listened to this far to me rambling on like this.
If you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com. You can also follow us on social media. We are at IVM Podcast on Twitter and Instagram. If you want to reach out to me, I am Ashdin Doc on Twitter and Instagram. You can find lots more information on my website, awesome180.com. or check out different content on my YouTube channel called AWESOME180. That's Awesome 180.
முன்ன ஒரு காலத்துலன்னு ஆரம்பிச்சு நம்ம தாத்தா பாட்டி சொல்ற கதை நம்ம யாருக்குமே மறக்காது. ஸ்டோரி டைம் தமிழ் அந்த பொன்னான காலத்துக்கு உங்களை மறுபடியும் கூட்டிக்கிட்டு போக போகுது. ஹாய், ஸ்டோரி டைம் தமிழ் பாட்காஸ்டுக்காக உங்களுடன் ரவிசங்கர் பாலச்சந்திரன். பொழுதுபோக்கு மட்டும் இல்லாம உங்க குழந்தைகளுக்கு நல்ல நெறிகளை கற்பனையுடன் கூடிய கதைகளாக வழங்க வருகிறது ஸ்டோரி டைம் தமிழ் பாட்காஸ்ட். ஒவ்வொரு நாளும் புதிய புதிய கதைகளை IVM இணையதளத்திலையும் IVM பாட்காஸ்ட் ஆப்லயும் யூடியூப்லயும் மத்த ஆடியோ தளங்களிலும் நீங்க கேட்கலாம்.
सफर, रास्ते, मंजिल और मुकाम अक्सर ये हमसे कुछ कहना चाहते हैं, पर हम हैं कि अपनी रोजमर्रा की जिंदगी में इन्हें सुनने से कतराते हैं. नमस्ते दोस्तों, मेरा नाम है केशव चतुर्वेदी और मैं आपको ले चलूंगा कुछ ऐसे सफर पर जहां आपको एक नया नजरिया मिलेगा सफर और मंजिलों को देखने का. आइए इन किस्से कहानियों में डूब जाएं. हर मंगलवार और शुक्रवार